What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again for another midday live stream for you guys with Ricky from Last Word on Spurs. We've abandoned the wafflers of Ben and Macca. It's just the cream of the crop. It's just us two here, Ricky. The cream always rises. How are you doing, Ricky? Good to have you on, mate.
Oh, mate, you too. Listen, I'm all right apart from the things to Tottenham. I mean, the thing is, every time I think about them, I just get drained. I know I'm doing a show with you on them, but, you know, I've got a lot of love for you boys. And it's funny that they've respectively killed off our partners in crime, quite literally, our co-brothers. So, yeah, it is what it is, but it's Tottenham, right? And I think
do you think if we would have beaten Ipswich, they'll be right on for this stream for sure, surely?
He's away on business at the moment.
Of course he is.
Of course they are.
As soon as the final whistle went, he's looking, where can I go? Where can I get out of here?
Lastminute.com, get ourselves away from 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Do that.
Brilliant. All right, so let's start off the stream by what's looking like news is going to break soon about Rodrigo Bann. By the way, this stream we're going to be talking about the season in general. There's a few other tidbits we are going to be talking about, but this news does seem to be breaking over the last day or so definitely today. Paul O'Keefe tweeted out about half an hour ago that Rodrigo Bann is set to be hit with a 7-game domestic ban, which would mean he is banned for 7 games domestically, but he is available for obviously the European games that we do have during that time. Now, I've looked at the fixtures and I've looked at what does that mean for us and for him. It means that if, let's say, this ban is implemented over the international break, which I'm assuming, you know, if the news is coming out, he's said to be hit with a ban, I'm assuming he's going to be soon. If we assume it's going to be over the international break, that means he will be missing until December the 26th. If that is the case, he'll be missing games against City away, Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, Southampton away, United in the quarterfinal, and Liverpool at home. So some big games he is missing domestically, and he's only available for 2 games, which would be Roma at home and Rangers away. Now, Ricky's, he's been starting the last few games for us. He's actually been quite good form. It's kind of been toing and froing during the season between him and Bissouma for that number 6 position. I think both have done well, but also on the flip side, both have also shown flaws as well in that position and showed why maybe we do need a 6, but also they've shown that they can play that position to a decent level. So for you, how much of a blow is it to have him out if it is true that he's out for 7 games and it is going to be over the international break? How much of a blow for that is that for you, Ricky?
I think he's our most informed midfielder in a very up and down, inconsistent team. So in terms of the loss, it's absolutely huge. But at the same time, I've made this very, very clear that whatever punishment was set, we'd have to take it. I think it's very hard to condone the nature of the incident and what's occurred with that. I know he's apologised since. And look, it's not for, I think, anybody to say what was right, what was wrong. At the end of the day, the FA have deemed it to be a case they have to act on it. You know, many might feel he's been made an example of. But I think the long and short of it is Spurs are losing their most consistent midfielder in an inconsistent team, and that's the biggest worry. I think we've spoke a lot here about seeing the lack of leaders on the field and the lack of real composure at times when it comes to seeing games out, fighting when it needs to be fought in games. And look, whilst Bentancur maybe is not the answer to all of Spurs' midfield problems, he on his day is a wonderful player. And I thought, to be honest with you, that Ipswich game was horrendous. I don't know if we want to go. I don't think we want to go too much back into that. Our co-partners are doing this show, but the reality is that he was, I think, one of very, very few players that could come out of any shred of credibility from that game. He got us back into the game to some degree in terms of scoring, but at the same time, it was an awful performance. But again, Bentancur, I think we're seeing the best Bentancur since the ACL injury he suffered. So on that basis, it's a big loss. I mean, the only benefit you have out of this is that he's going to be fresh and raring, hopefully, for the Europa League games, which, I called the game against Galatasaray a free hit. Mm-hmm. Maybe I was wrong to do that now in hindsight, because I don't think there's any easy game in there, but you are facing teams, no disrespect now, that have either changed or in the process of changing their manager in Roma, They've got obviously Elfsborg to come. They've got Hoffenheim in there as well. So the reality is that with such an inconsistent team, I suppose the guarantee you have with Bentancur is that he'll be fit for those respective Europa League games, providing that he doesn't get injured in training, which is not a guarantee with Tottenham because we know Spurs play training as almost game intensity, and we've picked up a number of injuries already this season with off-the-ball contact, with in contact, like you've seen with Odegaard as well, Richarlison, Romero, Mickey van der Ven. So that would be my worry. But yeah, it's a big, big loss for the football club because he is, as I've said, the most consistent of inconsistent players in our team at the moment.
Yeah, and as you say, the last few games against Villa, again, he came back into the side against Man City. He played against Villa, 2 really strong showings, and it looks like he'd earned that shirt back off Basuma, who looked like he earned the shirt back off him earlier in the season. And it's really gutting for. Well, look, I agree with you. Any ban that he got after the comments he made, he's going to have to take it on the chin because the comments were inexcusable and they were disgusting comments. I don't think he can really look. He apologised, but I don't think he can complain about anything that he's been hit with because he's only got himself to blame really for the ban that he's about to incur. So I don't think he can complain about it. But in terms of for him personally, the form he's getting into, and for us, for the club, sorry. It is very frustrating given that he is starting to show really good form. I agree with you, it's the best form he's shown for a while. There is definitely signs of him getting back to his best. And we're going to need him in that position because that's definitely a position which I think we can safely say does a lot of work in our team. And it's definitely a position that, we need players at their freshest. And I think that the worry now is could this ban have a compounding effect on Basuma if he's having to play every game, essentially. I know he's not playing Europa League, but he's going to have to play every game in the Premier League. And is that putting too much pressure on him? Is there too much pressure on him to stay consistent now in those performances? If he gets injured as well, or if he gets a ban, all of a sudden we're relying on Archie Gray probably in that position. So is there a worry for you that this ban could have a compounding effect on the squad?
Well, it is on the basis that I think I've said he's the most consistent of our inconsistent players at the moment. So I think midfield now for Tottenham is a general worry. I don't think Ange knows his best midfield, hence our continued rotation of it. I think last season he rotated the midfield 28 times just in the Premier League alone. So I think when you're looking at the moment, does Spurs know our best midfield? And if our best midfield is what was played on the weekend and we lost at home to Ipswich, that tells you that it's not good enough. I think it goes back to what we said in the summer. I think every moderate, like-minded Spurs fan I spoke to were all of the opinion that we needed a number 6. I fully expected that to be the priority position. And yet, what we were sold since the window has closed is that Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall have been absolutely brilliant behind the scenes. Rave reviews are being told. Yet neither of them have started a Premier League game, which I find crazy when you consider that we're heading into, I would say, the kind of middle of November, beginning of December, which I now really see as the business stage of the season. Now, let's be honest about it. If Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall are good enough for Tottenham, why are they not playing in the first team? And with no disrespect, I have to say Bergvall's performance against Galatasaray wasn't up to standard. That doesn't mean he's a bad player. He hasn't had a huge amount of game time at the same time, but I'm seeing with Bergvall a very young player that, I might be wrong in saying this, may need a loan in the second half of the season just to really get up to speed of what the Premier League's about, what the English League is about. And there's no disrespect to the player. I just don't think he's had enough opportunities. I look at Archie Gray, for all of Archie Gray's performances in a Tottenham shirt, where I think he's done fairly good. The biggest criticism I have of Archie Gray is that we're not seeing him in his best position. And I think, you touched upon it there, Sim, about moving Gray to number 6. He's not even been allowed to play his position yet, and we're middle of November. We might be relying on him. So there's a lot of things around Tottenham that I just scratch my head on. I mean, I will just say this at the very top of this show. I don't think it's all Ange's fault. I don't think it's all the players' fault. I do think the board have to take a huge amount of responsibility for this because I've said before on a number of shows that when that transfer window closed, I don't know any Spurs fan that felt we were actually much more significantly strengthened to be able to really go and challenge higher up than what we finished the previous season. I've got to be honest with you and say that. The reality is that Spurs shouldn't be 10th in the Premier League. However, as we know with the table in itself about the points, a win catapults you into the top 3, the top 4. But my worry would be is that, like a lot of Tottenham's transfer windows, we never really get what we need and are left wanting more. And that's always been the way I've felt under ENIC in transfer windows since their tenure at the football club. So the reality for me is that where Spurs are going to finish, I think they probably will finish 6th, 7th, if I'm going to be honest with you. I want to say higher. I think many say, could we be a cup team? And the reality is, we're going to be honest with you, even with cup teams, they have to, on their day, be good enough tactically to get results. And the problem with Tottenham is that we have shown in one of games we can get results, but tactically, I feel at times we're left wanting. And again, I will make this point that I think Ange has shown this season at times some flexibility, some adaptation when it comes to certain games where he's made subs at half-time that have gone on and changed those games into victory. But you can't get away from the fact that our away record is massively, massively concerning. And, for any team that at this stage of the season is still inconsistent one week to the next, that's a worry. I have said in the previous weeks, I have seen progression in terms of results in respect of last season with regards to performances, but to be losing at home to Ipswich, to be losing at home to Crystal Palace, 2 teams that, before we played them, hadn't got a victory to date, to produce that second half we saw against Brighton isn't acceptable. And at the end of the day, regardless of what I think of the chairman, ENIC in general, the responsibility on the team, on the tactics, falls with the manager. And we know what Daniel Levy's like. When we're at this stage where we are in the season, where you look at our points at the moment, what we've accumulated, I think Ange has had one more than Nuno at the stage of when he was in charge. That is worrying. At the end of the day, look, whether you're Ange in or Ange out, the reality is that Daniel Levy normally pulls the trigger when he feels that top 4 is no longer gettable in the league under the current manager in charge. And I would say it's a concerning time for Tottenham, but we're used to this. This has been the same story, the same cycle sim for however many years. Things aren't going well, sack the manager. Things aren't going well, change the coaching staff. Things are going well, change the people above. The one constant factor in Tottenham is that there's the same chairman there, a la Conte speech after Southampton.
No, well, I don't know. We kind of diverted the topic from Bentancur, but we'll get into the season as a whole in a minute. But if we're sticking to just this Bentancur suspension for a moment, you mentioned giving, maybe this could give Archie Gray a bit more opportunities and Lucas Berg as well. Why haven't they been playing more in the Premier League? I guess my argument would be, first of all, they're 18 years of age and they are getting very good minutes in Europa League, which I think is very valuable for players, though their kind of ages. Because even Europa League, I think, is a kind of level they're not used to, in my opinion. It's probably a higher level than they're used to playing, for their old clubs. But as well, I mean, where do we expect them to get in? But where is Bergvall going to get in ahead of Kulusevski and Maddison and Papsar? Is Archie Gray supposed to be playing week in, week out ahead of the likes of Bentancur and Basuma, who are 2 very, very good players? So Kulusevski's been brilliant this season. I think Maddison, as much as he has been, in the team the last couple of games, I think he's not been bad this season. Sarr has come in last few games, been brilliant. So I don't see a big problem with how we're using them, in my opinion. Like, I don't think.
Do you, just going back to on this, do you know our best midfield?
No, I don't know our best midfield, but I don't think it's because we don't have any good midfielders. I think it's because they're all kind of similar level. Like, I think.
Okay, it goes back to your point. The level that Tottenham want to be, I'm going to be honest with you, I think this is where, again, there needs to be an alignment of expectations here. I keep asking this question, what do Spurs want to be? And this is where, again, there's very mixed messages. You've got the manager coming out before the season starts, telling us, why can't we challenge for the league? We then have an end to the window like we have, with no disrespect on this, Sim, and come back to me on this. Bergvall and Gray to date, we're the middle of November, have not yet started a Premier League game. The manager said us he wants to challenge for the league. We're currently sitting in 10th. Our form is up and down, up and down.
So who do you want? Wait. But Ricky, who do you want to get rid of? What midfielders do you want to get rid of?
It's not about getting rid of the midfielders. For me, it's the it goes back to the point what I said, is that when you look at Spurs' transfer in the summer, Tottenham, in my opinion, did not do anywhere near significantly enough to be able to propel themselves higher in terms of where they want to be challenging. And I think that's the biggest problem. We don't quite know what we want to be. I think as fans, we see ourselves really trying to challenge the likes of the top 4, the top 6. But the reality is, you know, it goes back to the point that I think as a squad, and it goes back to what you're saying there, Sam, I think we've got a squad really that when you look at it, there's not really any, with no due respect when I say there's any real elite stars that are going to propel Tottenham higher than what they are at the moment. I don't think we're a 10th place team, but I don't think we're a 4th place team. I'm going to be honest with you. I think we're somewhere in between 5th to 8th at the moment from what I'm seeing in terms of performances. You know, you can get really good days with Tottenham, you can get really, really bad days with Tottenham. And the reality is that for me in that midfield, we all said in the summer going into it, any fan that's really kind of, no disrespect, follows the club week in, week out, is close to the ground, would say Tottenham are absolutely crying out for a number 6, a ball carrier that can take that ball forward and can release the ball out to the wingers and be able to propel us forward in attacks. With no disrespect, I think Sarri is an incredibly young midfielder. I think it'll be great in time. Kulusevski, I totally agree with you, has been Spurs' player of the season so far. Bentancur, there's a re-emergence of him, which again is the real shame behind this latest situation around the ban. But again, we've said he has to take that ban. It is what it is. But the reality is that James Maddison, in my opinion, James hasn't got to the level that I think we expected James to get to when you looked at some of his performances for Leicester, where he was really the shining light for them, you know, Man City away, FA Cup final performances. I've not seen that James Maddison consistently grab a game for Tottenham and really look to push this club on. That's just my opinion. And I think the shame is that, like, it goes back to your point, we've got players at a very, very similar level. You know, with no disrespect, Eze was in the Tottenham boxes for more than once last season. How did we allow that situation to manifest and not get that deal done? You then look at the situation around Pedro Neto. I don't want to go down a tangent here, Tim, but just the last one on this. The club were in talks with Pedro Neto. They get in talks with him and then realise they can't match his wage demands. 2 days later, he's joining Chelsea, and we signed Wilson Odobert, who's injured at the moment. That's not Wilson Odobert's fault. He might be a really good kid that will be great in the future. But the problem with Tottenham is that where we are at the moment, and it's very, very clear, we are not prepared to spend the money on the players that will really elevate and take this squad up a level. We are prepared to spend money on players that we no disrespect have got great potential in the likes of Berg, and Archie Graham, might be great stars for the future, but what they're not going to do right now is take Tottenham to a place of really pushing them and elevating them on beyond the level they are at the moment. I think that is the shame around the miscommunication of the manager coming out saying, we want to compete, we want to really push on in the league. And you look at our squad in general, and it is a bit of a muchness where the level is the level. And that's why you're seeing such an inconsistency of results, because the players are young. They're learning, they're growing on the job, as you've said as well. And it's really hard when players are learning and growing on the job. If you remember under Maurizio, I think in his first and second season, to see a level of consistency. But what I did see with Maurizio in the second season in charge of him, I saw progression, I saw players improving. And I think that's where I've got deep, deep concerns at the moment, that is the players all fully buying into this project? I don't believe Ange told the players to play the way they played against Ipswich. I refuse to believe that. So it goes back to my point. Are these players listening to the manager?
Well, obviously, it's hard to. If you say yes after a loss to Ipswich, then it doesn't exactly look good on the manager, does it? If you say yes, they are listening to the manager, and they can't even get a win against a team who are winless. But look, I guess we'll get into. I guess we'll talk about the whole season as a whole. It's been quite maddening being kind of a Spurs fan this season, isn't it? Because you kind of don't know where we stand at the moment, because I think up until I would argue up until probably even the Palace game. How long ago was the Palace game? Probably up until the Palace game, I would say there was a fairly decent, consistent level of performance we've had this season. Yes, we've lost the likes of Leicester and Newcastle. Sorry, we drew to Leicester, we lost to Newcastle. But, you know, in those games, we had fairly decent performances. We lost to Arsenal at home, but that was obviously a game which... what's it called? We lost to Arsenal, but that obviously there was a game which we lost 1-0 off a set piece, and there was a very tight game. We battered Everton, we battered Brentford, we then battered Man United, and you think, okay, we've turned a corner, and then bam, and then we're 2-0 up against Brighton away, and you're thinking this team is really on a roll now. Like, we've really come into the season, and we collapse in that second half. You think, oh my God, what's happened in that second half? We've completely fallen apart. Why are we falling apart? Then next week we play West Ham. We're 1-0 down. You're thinking, what's going on here? We gave up a 2-0 lead against Brighton. We're now 1-0 down to West Ham. We turn it around and batter them 4-1. You think, okay, we're back on track again. Right, we battered a team who, it's their cup final. We battered them 4-1. Spurs are back on track. Next week, we then lose away at Palace, who are winless in a really abject performance. Probably the worst performance of the season up until that point. You're thinking, what is going on? We thought we turned a corner against West Ham, but maybe these big issues are bigger than we thought. And the second half against Brighton wasn't a coincidence. And I know we turned it around against West Ham, but terrible performance against Palace, like inexcusable, lacking fight, all that kind of stuff. We hadn't learned our lessons. You're thinking, it's going to take a lot to turn that around. We then beat City in the Cup in a brilliant performance, at home, in a deserved win against, whatever you want to say about whether it was a well-rested City side, they still had a lot of good players on that pitch, and we beat them 2-1. We then go and beat Villa 4-1. After being 1-0 down, and you're thinking, wow, we've turned a corner again. All right, we're back on track again. 2 really good big wins, 2 good wins against 2 good sides in Villa and Man City. Like, maybe we really have learned those lessons from the Palace defeat in the second half against Brighton. These were 2 wins as well. We showed fight, we showed aggression. We actually had to win in kind of different ways. It wasn't just free-flowing football against Man City. We had to dig deep. We had to sit a bit deeper and counter-attack against Aston Villa. We had Papsar from the start. We had played a bit more transitional, with a bit more legs in the midfield. You're thinking, wow, we've turned a corner again. Maybe we have learned those lessons. And then we come up against Ipswich at home again, another winless team, and we lose 2-1. It's like, if you're a fan of this club, I mean, it's so, your brain must be absolutely fried. Forget like the last 20 years. Obviously, your brain's fried from that anyway. But just this season, the highs and the lows are just, when we're good, we're amazing. We're battering teams 3-0, 4-1. We're playing beautiful football. We're taking teams apart. And then when we're bad, we're losing to 2 teams who are yet to win a game this season. We're losing away from home, and we're losing 2-1 at home to an Ipswich team that came into this game not having won at all this season. And if we would have won, we would have gone third. So we knew it was a massive game. And we had rested players on Thursday for this game on Sunday. So how as a Tottenham fan, do you get your head around where you see us at? Because obviously, after this is being recorded after the defeat to Ipswich, so this is coming just after our worst defeat of the season and a very embarrassing loss. Let's not get it twisted. It's an embarrassing loss at home to Ipswich, especially under the circumstances of how big of a game it was. But we've also had very big and impressive wins as well this season, and wins by big margins. And if we're recording this after wins that we have done, we feel very differently about this team, and it's a different story. But how do we get our heads around where we're going this season? Because it just seems as though whenever we think we've turned a corner, we then do a U-turn. Like, how do we get our head around it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to process, definitely, in all that you've come out with. And even thinking about it, it's draining, I'll be honest with you, as a fan. We were recording this on the Wednesday, so we had 4 days off since the game. And even like when you read it back to me, it doesn't make me feel any better than what I did 4 days ago. I think, what you can't keep doing is keep giving teams a head start. We've gone 1-0 down, I think, in 13 of the last 15 home games. And also, just bear this in mind as well, I think we've always conceded the first goal to promoted teams under Ange Postecoglou. That's not a dig at Ange, but there's something clearly not right in the mindset that we keep on going behind. And it's not the first manager. We've seen that if you remember, under Conte as well, we seem to not be great in the first half. Do you remember we kept down saying, are we conserving energy for the second half of games? I just don't quite know, what to feel, how to feel. But I've got to say that I look at the situation that we're in, and it's not sustainable at the moment. That doesn't mean I want to sack the manager tomorrow, because we've said this before, you sack the manager, who else is going to come in? But the reality is that I see a group of players there that are definitely better than what they're showing on a week-to-week basis. You see the potential when they go and beat Aston Villa the way they do. You see the potential when they go and knock Man City out the cup. I'm not going to start going into the Man City side on that day. It was still a good team that, if everyone says it's their B on C team, well, that's still a team that would still be in and around, in my opinion, the top 6. So what are we looking at here that's going to really try and bring this all together in terms of context? The context is that they've got good days, they've got bad days in them, and it is just trying to, if you can, even that out over the course of the season where we're going to see improvement. I think my worry is that what I expected to see of Tottenham in the second season under Ange was a lot more consistency than what I've seen to date. And that's where, again, I have got deep concerns. And I will make this point again, just to be very, very clear. This is not Ange Postecoglou's fault. This is my personal opinion. I don't believe Ange, in the summer, turned around and said, I want Archie Gray, I want Lucas Bergvall. I don't believe they were personally going to be on his shopping list. But what I do think is because of the way we finished last season, I think it made it very hard for Ange to be able to get the profile and maybe experience of players that he wanted. And he would have to prove to the Tottenham board that he'd be able to work with more of a younger profile of player that would be a much more open to running for him, sprinting for him, doing the job in which he asked them to do. And I think had he, had a better start to this season so far in terms of results, that would maybe give the board of Tottenham more confidence that we can invest more money into him. I think to date, Ange has had around 300 million. It's a lot of money that he's had to spend on the squad. And we have had some good results in there. Let's not get it twisted. I think it's hard when you look back at those first 10 games of last season. No one can deny that we had some really good performances in there and results. But I will make this point. I had seen at the start of this season better performances than some of those that I saw in the first 10 of last season, but we were getting results. I think the biggest worry that I've got now for me is as you have illustrated there with reading the results out and the nature of the performances, such an up and down level week in, week out. And I don't think for a club of Tottenham's, I'm going to be laughed at for saying this word, ambition of what they want to be or what they want to become, I don't think you can have that form week in, week out. It just isn't sustainable. And to keep going behind, I don't know if it's the players thinking of, we go one down at Ipswich, oh, don't worry, we'll turn it around because we've turned it around so many times. I think we've got, 27 points, the most from losing positions under Ange at home. So there's obviously that belief there that we can get results. But at the end of the day, if you keep going 1-0 down every week, at some point you are going to go 2-0 down. And it's going to be hard for you to recover from that. So I think where I am right now, it's not all the manager's fault. But he does need to turn this form around fast in terms of finding more consistency. And I think the question that a lot of fans probably ask themselves is that how much more money do you keep throwing at this in relation to this specific manager? Because at the end of the day, this man is, in my opinion, not ever going to get the players he wants. And, that is not his fault. That is, unfortunately, the hand that's dealt above him, where the reality is that you are made to do with what you get. That's just the fact. You are, in my opinion, you never get the specific players you want, although you can argue that Timo Werner, it seems Ange did want that kind of player. And that's where, again, I will go back and say that maybe set the tone for the summer. The reality is that I think what we saw in the back of last season was Timo had some decent goal involvements and some decent goal contributions. Was that a player, and this goes back to this point we're talking about this season, that was going to really push Tottenham forward and take us to the next level? I've got to be honest and say that I've not seen that much underwhelmment of a player rejoining in a long time at Tottenham. And I think, you make the mistake once to sign him, but to sign him twice, we don't disrespect to Timo, because I've got a lot of time for him and I feel for the guy from a confidence perspective and a mental health perspective to go through the amount of criticism that he has done. It does worry me of the players that we're identifying and bringing into the club in terms of, are we really moving forward? And I think the reality is that if we are going to continue having some of the natures of the winners that we're having, and look, we have made the odd good signing in there, Mickey van der Ven being one of them, there needs to be, I think, a lot more thought and process going into the type of players that we're bringing in on the level of play. I just unfortunately see this continuing, Sim. I've got to be honest with you. This consistency, I don't. Although, again, I'll go back to the point for fair balance here. I think we've scored the most in the Premier League. We are definitely down in terms of the goals conceded so far this season. I think we've got the most in terms of XG that we've created. We're facing less from an XG perspective. The stats can tell you one thing, but I think the eye test doesn't lie to people. And when you keep going behind in games, you make it very hard for yourself to come back. And it's some of the nature of some of those lethargic performances, the likes of Ipswich, the likes of Brighton in the second half, the likes of Crystal Palace. They are coming off the back of Europa League games. But the reason why I don't use the Europa League as an excuse is because we've rotated in those games. We're not playing the same. We're not playing the same 11 on the Thursday to then what we're playing on the Sunday. So I just feel with Tottenham, there's a lot more questions than there is answers right now, and I do feel that blame has to be apportioned for across the group. You know, from the players to the manager to the board. I don't think it's all of everybody's fault, but there's accountability on all of those to be able to step up and get things right. And there's a lot of Tottenham fans probably right now feel very, very confused and not really sure at the moment of exactly what we can do to fix it, apart from the obvious one being that the club is in dire need of investment. They're crying out for investment, they keep on telling us. And I don't see things improving until Tottenham get that investment. But again, you've seen with Newcastle, even when you get a significant amount of investment, there's no guarantee you're going to have the hedge fund to be able to spend that accordingly. But we do know Spurs obviously are on the right side of PSR. You're right, it's a young squad with potential, but it does need experience in their sin. I think it goes back to the point that with away days in there, when the going gets tough, in my opinion, there is not enough players to be able to really turn that tide, be able to fight, be able to grit out results like difficult periods at Brighton, like difficult periods at Palace, and even at home to Ipswich, where the crowd is expecting you to do something. We need players that are able to take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think Dembele was one of those in Pochettino's era, most certainly did that. You know, Modric when he was at Tottenham, Eriksen when he was at Tottenham. You know, these players, Dele Alli when he was at Tottenham, these players had the ability to change games. That's my worry at the moment with Tottenham. There's not enough players in there that when the going really gets tough, they're able to change it.
Well, after 11 games, you say we've only had one back-to-back wins. We've only won back-to-back games once this season. That was against Brentford and then Man United in the Premier League. That is anyway, beating Brentford 3-1 and then beating United 3-0. But as well, we've only had back-to-back losses once as well, which was Newcastle away 2-1 and Arsenal at home 1-0. So it's really maddening to think. Of where this football club is headed. In terms of, I'm looking at some of the stats this season, like in terms of general games. Apart from the Leicester game and the Ipswich game, in terms of XG, we've out XG'd every other team that we've played against this season. So when it comes to just the facts of the matter, when it comes to what the stats are saying, like on a surface level, when you're looking at the the amount of chances we're creating to conceding within games, it seems as though in general the trajectory is upwards. The trajectory is we should be winning a lot more of these games based on the stats than we are. And is that to do with a quality thing, like the tactics working, but we don't have the quality to implement it? Or is it the stats are just misleading, and actually if you watch the games we shouldn't be winning a lot of them, and maybe these XG stats are flawed? Like, what do you think? Because it can't be a coincidence that in most of these games we're out, we got higher XG than the opponents, is it? Or maybe it is just coincidence and the eye test tells you something different.
No, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think, like I said, there's been improvements from last season in certain areas, but for all of those improvements, at the end of the day, it's a results-based business. Stats can only give you so much. I think also stats are facts, right? They don't have feelings. So the reality is that depending on what you're trying to portray, stats can paint different narratives. I can give you that stat, like you say, we've outscored the most teams. We've conceded less, but at the same time, there's a stat out there that we're 1 point better off than what we were under Nuno at this stage, in which costed the manager his job. So it depends how you want to portray them. I mean,
I know, but when you look at the league table, do you not feel like it's a bit of a weird season this season at the moment? I'm sure even itself out. I'm sure even itself out. I've never seen the league table as tight. It's 4 points between 13th and 3rd. 4 points. So Chelsea in 3rd in 2 games could be 13th in 2 games time. It's crazy.
I think, again, no, you're right. And listen, the reality is that we have to also bear in mind we're facing Man City next. I'm not doing that down because we've got a fairly good record at City, but that table can easily change. I think, we have to focus on ourselves and our own performances and our own results. That's the reality. We can keep referring to the table, but what we're seeing week upon week, Sim, is not sustainable, is it? You can't have a week of a win and then we lose, and then we win and then we lose.
Results-wise, no, of course, but if you're getting higher XG than your opponents every week, then hopefully that will even itself out. You would think. Maybe is it just an unlucky period?
I have to put this out there as well, and this is not negative. This is just reality. When you look at who Spurs have faced so far, I think we've had a fairly kind start to the fixture list. Sim, we haven't yet played Chelsea home and away. We haven't yet played Liverpool home and away. The reality is that we've got some big tests on the horizon for Tottenham, Man City home and away as well. So, it's not
Bring him on.
really... It's not a really horrendous fixture list to start with. But at the same time, look, to give it granted to everybody, every game is tough in the Premier League. Let's be honest about it. Arsenal scored late goals against, I think, Southampton and Leicester to win. So the reality is that there's no easy game in the Premier League. But I'd be lying to you and said if I wasn't worried about the nature of our form. And the thing is, I was sat here a week ago, honestly feeling that maybe we turned an element of a corner under Ange. But the nature of the performances for me against the lower league teams is damning. And I just wonder whether we're in a situation where the players can easily raise their game for the likes of Villa, the likes of, no disrespect, Man City. But when it comes to the smaller sides, that doesn't seem to be there, the effort and application. And my worry is that, again, I will make this point, that I don't think Ange Postecoglou tells the players to play the way they're playing against Ipswich. I really don't believe that. And that's what's worrying me. How many of these players are actually listening to the manager? I don't think Ange just sent them out and instructed them to play as badly as what they played against Ipswich. I don't believe that. I just don't. And again, this is why partly I feel sorry for him, because I feel he's been handicapped by the squad he's got to work with. I don't believe that he's got all the players he wants. But again, I'll make that point. I don't think the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Spurs managers have always got the players they wanted. So the reality is that you're having to work with a group and get the absolute maximum out of what you're getting, whilst then trying to punch above your weight, which I just don't think is sustainable. So it's really, really tough.
I look at our team though.
I don't think it's all on the manager. And I don't think the manager should be losing his job at this stage. But what I will say to you is that if Tottenham go on and lose 5 or 6 in a row, I think he'd be under massive pressure. But I said this on our show on Sunday that I honestly think if Ange is there towards the end of the season, I think Ange himself will look at it in the summer and think, do I want to be here? He's quite a proud man. He's quite a man of integrity. He walked away from the Australia job. That meant a lot to him. And therefore, what I mean is at the end of the season, he very rarely, Ange, does a third season at clubs. Again, we've had the likes of Vince Rigari on the show, John Grecian, who's wrote the books on Ange. He has to feel himself really invested in a project and motivated to carry on. And I just feel like a lot of our fans, I look at him in pressers after the game, he looks absolutely broken. He looks devastated, I know there's that whole narrative around why doesn't he look at the camera, and that's a separate conversation. But the reality is that he looks so despondent after games. I feel like the club's already broken him, and we're only 14 months in. That's my worry. And the reality is that when he comes to the end of this season, I think Ange, if he gets to the end of the season, because I think, again, with Tottenham, they're trigger happy. I think if we go and lose 5 and 6 in a row and that gap really does kind of lengthen towards the top 4, I think Daniel Levy will pull that trigger, because history tells you he does. Not, I want him to or I don't want him to. History tells you he does that. At the end of the season, I think it's very likely as much that Ange will walk away from Tottenham as much as Tottenham might walk away from Ange. I really believe that, because he has to feel that this project is going somewhere. And the nature of the results week in, week out, up, win, loss, that doesn't show you really that we are progressing, over results, does it? It shows you that one week you have a great week, one week you have a bad week, and we can sit here and talk about the XG, we can sit here and talk about the for and against in terms of goals and, respective fixtures of last season. I think the bloke is just as frustrated as us. And that's the thing I want to say. I think he really does care. I think he really, really does care, and it hurts him. And the one thing he does do is, maybe not like the previous couple of managers, is take responsibility all on him for the performances, which also, to some degree, I think is unfair. And the players are, again, as I've seen in previous times, supporting Tottenham as well, throwing the manager under the bus by their performances. I don't believe he's Tottenham to play the way they've told against Ipswich, or the likes of Palace, or the likes of Brighton in the second half. And he said that as well.
Well, then he's got to take responsibility for that. I'm sorry. I look at the team and look, do I think it's as good as Man City and Liverpool and teams who are challenging the title? I don't. But you think you keep saying he's been just hamstrung with what he has, and that's the reality. But I'm looking at the team, and I think he does have a lot to work with. I think he's got a lot of talent to work with. I think.
So if you think that, this is a really interesting point. You're saying it's a decent squad to work with. So do you feel then is he underperforming with the squad?
I mean, to be 10th right now, he is. Doesn't mean I think that'll continue. I don't think this is a 10th place team. Is this team not good enough to beat Palace and Ipswich? Of course it is. I think we definitely have the players that should be winning those games.
On that basis,
Results-wise, we're underperforming. Yeah, for sure.
Do you think the players are not listening to his tactics then? If that's the case, because I don't believe, from what I've seen, you're in the stadium as well. I don't believe he asked them to go out and play as badly as Ipswich.
No one asked their team to. No one asked their team to go out and play badly. I don't think Russell Martin doesn't go out to play badly.
Are they listening to him? Are they listening to him?
Well, when I see us get big wins, I think they are. But when I see us get terrible losses, then obviously I don't think they are. So it's a different.
I've seen this in the chat a few times here. I think I've been the one that's probably been one of the most highly critical people of the window. I never said when the window was closed it was good enough to any degree. I said Spurs have once again ended the transfer window, and although they got Solanke in, I didn't look at us and think we're going to really significantly improve based on the business Spurs have done. I think what you're seeing right now is, as you're outlining to us on this show so far, is a team that are inconsistent. 1 week you can get a win, the next week you can perform really, really badly. And that's because it's a young squad that to some degree is learning its trade. But my biggest worry of all is, I'll go back to your point. You're saying, I agree with you. Andrew's not asking the players to go out and play badly. My point I'm making is that my biggest worry is I don't think some of these players are listening to him. It's very easy to play well against Villa, very easy to play well against Man City. You're on a stage team where the Premier League is the most elite stage. You want to play well against any team, but you want to play well against the big sides. Let's not have it right. You for your own personal satisfaction as a player, you want to play your absolute best when you're playing against the big sides. That's why, no disrespect, we've got the results like United, who are in transition. You know, we've had the results against City, who, no disrespect, had players missing. Aston Villa, that was a great, great win. But in the games where, Sim, you really need to roll your sleeves up and fight and grit and tough it out, we have not been there at those races. Brighton away in the second half. Who was that player that was really trying to get us through that game to see us out? We completely and absolutely capitulated. Ipswich at home, not enough leaders. And then again, we go back to the Palace game where, quite frankly, on the day, we never showed up. And I love the fact Ange comes out after a game and says, it's my responsibility. I think the players have also got to take a huge amount of responsibility. The performances have not been anywhere near good enough. And I really honestly think that when you're looking at Spurs in general right now, I don't see what's going to really massively change in terms of these results, Sim. I'd love to sit here and say I can see 5 wins on the bounce coming around the corner, but I can't. I don't see what shows me that we are going to become more consistent when I've looked at these first 10, 11 games. And that's my worry. I want to sit here with you and say to you that I can see this is just a blip and we're going to get better and we're going to improve and it's a young squad. But what worries me is that when you're continually seeing the same reoccurring themes and errors being made week after week, game after game, that is truly concerning. And, you know, we seem to concede goals that are a real carbon copy of the previous week. Why are those issues not being addressed? You know, I think there's also issues in the team, which I'm sure we'll come on to. James Maddison's the vice captain of the football club. He seems a player that can create. He seems a player that can change games. He gets 3.5 minutes against Ipswich to come on and affect the game. There's something not quite right there. And I'm not saying Andrews isn't right for dropping him. I don't think James Maddison has been as good as Kulusevski this season. But for me at the moment, I'm seeing more warning signs than I am seeing green lights that it's going to get better. And that's what worries me. Because I don't really saying this. I want to be positive. I want to be proven wrong, Sim, more than anything. I want to be proven wrong.
I think a lot of fans feel like you feel, especially after a performance and defeat like we've just had. And I don't blame you for feeling like we're destined to be like this for the whole season. And maybe we are. And maybe I'm wrong for thinking that, you know, looking at the team, well, I do think there's enough there to turn it around and there is enough there to gain a bit of consistency in what seems to be a very inconsistent Premier League this season, a very competitive Premier League, which a lot of teams, only Man City and Liverpool have won more than 5 games. We're also on 5 wins. So a lot of teams are really struggling to get wins on the board this season, not just Spurs. But we're the only teams that have lost to Palace and Ipswich. So on that basis, I can understand a lot of fans feeling at the moment that they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. They don't feel like it's going to turn around. They feel like we are hamstrung by a lack of quality in the team. I personally believe, when I look at the team, I look at the back line in terms of personnel, I think we've got good players there. I think Udogi's a good player. I think Romero, Van de Ven, Porro, they're all good players. Vicario, there's question marks on him on set pieces, but I think he's a good shot stopper. And I think, he's decent with his feet. When I look at the midfield, I think Decky's been brilliant. I think we got Maddison, who I think, whatever you want to say about him, we'll go into Maddison in a second because I think it's an interesting conversation. But obviously, I think he's a good player. We got Pat Matessar, who's, I think, a great up-and-coming young midfielder. And we got Bassoum and Bentancur, who you might not think they're the perfect for that number 6 position. And you might be right in thinking that. But they're still two very good players. There's no doubt about it. They're two midfielders that could easily play for top 6 teams, in my opinion, on their day. They're two very solid midfielders who can easily be playing in good teams. And then the front three, I think maybe that's where the biggest upgrade is needed. I think Solanke was a great signing. Obviously, Son is 32, but I still think he's got a lot to offer. Brennan, I don't think he's the best winger in the world, but he still gets decent numbers when it comes to goal contributions. But does he offer enough apart from those goal contributions? I think there's a good question mark there. But I'm just going through the whole team. I don't look at that team and think, how they're all scrubs. Well, how can we ever win a game?
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't look at that team thinking, we're destined for mid-table. I think there is a lot to work with, coupled into the fact that there is a lot of potential to grow in terms of the likes of Berg, Val and Gray and players off the bench and things like that. I agree with you. We completely. I think the re-signing of Werner has 100% held us back. And I don't disagree with that. I said it at the time, and I completely agree with you, that signing Werner on loan again, and not only did it hold us back when it came to getting more foreign players in, but also a player in a crucial position, which was on the wing, upgrading that position. I don't think Odegaard was a bad idea. Get a young up-and-coming winger who can maybe grow into a star, but you also need to couple that with players who you can rely on performing week in, week out, and you just can't do that with Timo Werner, unfortunately. And I don't know why we re-signed him on a loan deal. I think that was a big mistake. Obviously, we've got Mikey Moore coming through, but he's only 17 as well. But I think there is a lot to work with. In terms of up front, we've got Solanke and Richarlison as 2 number 9s. You can say whatever you like, but can you name me a squad who has 2 better number 9s? You can maybe say Watkins and Duran, but do Arsenal have 2 better number 9s than that? Do Liverpool even have 2 better number 9s than that? They got Jota and Nunez. I mean, yeah, they're 2 very good players, but Richarlison and Solanke, there are 2 solid number 9s there that a lot of teams would like to have in as options as their number 9. So I just feel like, for me, we're definitely underperforming where we should be in the league. I think we've definitely got, we definitely need to be going higher up in the league when it comes to results-wise. And Andrew will have to take responsibility for the inconsistency that we're showing for sure. But I don't think I sit here when I look at that team and think, Andrew's just got nowhere to go, or Andrew's, really struggling. I can understand why Andrew's struggling to get the results, because look what he has to deal with. They're all rubbish. I just don't see that. Has he gone?
He's just been.
All right. Let's read the super chat from Jory saying THFC Corp says, Jory says THFC Corp is winning big time. Revenue growth is the game. Only when THFC Corp start losing profit will the board consider change how it operates. And we know that is what Tottenham Gear want to do. They're here to make profit. I understand that's what the board is all about. It's all about profitability and not making big losses and dealing with handling the wage structure and making sure the team is profitable. So I think I don't disagree with that, but I also think FSG as well is a ownership which is also geared towards profitability, and they seem to be able to compete as well. So I don't think it's a case of we can't compete with the amount of money we're spending. We're spending enough money, in my opinion. You can argue just about where we spend the money and all these different things. But again, I think we have a good squad. Is it a squad good enough to win the league? No. Did I expect a squad that's going to be good enough to win the league 2 years after Ange coming in? Probably not. I think that's probably a wild expectation to have. When Ange is as ambitious as he is, he's obviously always going to be looking at the top. I'm sure that's just how he is as a person. And obviously, we don't have the tools right now to probably win leagues. But do we have the tools to compete for top four and win trophies? I do. I think we have the squad to do that. And if he falls wildly short of either of those things, he's going to have to take responsibility for that, in my opinion. Nad Alcaraz says Ipswich conceded 4 at West Ham and Brentford. They did, and it was a terrible result. There's no getting around it. It was a shocking result from Tottenham. I can't get around from the fact that it was disgraceful that we lost at home to Ipswich, and I can understand after a result like that, a lot of people are feeling the way they're feeling right now about where we're heading, especially when every week it's where we get so high with big wins and then we get so low with terrible losses. Adieri says, hi Sim and Ricky, how are you? Amanda Staveley and Al Ruman PIF should be there at Newcastle United. Should be there. Okay, I'm not sure. What are you saying? They need to come to Tottenham? Richarlison, solid. Look, I think he's a solid player when he's fit. The problem is he's never fit, and the problem is last season he had his injury problems, and they've carried on, and that is unfortunate. I do think he's a good player. I think he's a good backup striker, but unfortunately, it is what it is with him at the moment. But I think in theory, when they're both fit, I think him and Solanke are good options. But welcome back, Ricky. You're back on. I wanted to ask you about something actually, which I remember. I think might have been the first stream we did together. Not the first stream, but maybe the first one of this season. We spoke about what our ambitions are for this season, and I think you mentioned that when it comes to the league, you're not too bothered about where we finish in the league, and you're more interested in Carabao, FA Cup, and Europa League. But also on that basis, would you not still be pretty happy with how we are?
Look, you're not wrong, Sim. I actually said that very, very clearly, actually, when we first started doing shows. I think I remained consistent on that throughout our episodes together, that I have been more of a person that's had more of an emphasis on the cup games. I think league position with Tottenham down the years, I've said, I know we got to a Champions League final, let's be honest and real about that. You've seen what the chairman thinks about us getting to a Champions League final. He couldn't wait to put an engraving of finalists on there. The reality is that I think with Spurs in the league, I don't think we've proved enough, in my opinion, to really, really sustain a real challenge, if you want to call that, in terms of a title, or to really be in a situation where if we get into the Champions League, we can win it. And therefore, I think Spurs are probably better suited to winning a cup. How long we've waited for a trophy, Sim. If I'm going to be honest with you, mate, I'm worried how many more years I'll wait. I want to see my beautiful boys, bless their heart, one day go to Wembley with me and we see Tottenham win a trophy. And just be able to enjoy days out. We've all got lots of Spurs family and friends that I think for all of us, we just want that day at Wembley. I know so many Spurs.
But that's what I'm saying. But Ricky, that's what I'm saying. At the moment, we're in a quarterfinal. We're going well in Europa League. The league is not going that well, but if you're focused on a trophy,
we're a cup team. We've had good results this season in one-off games. I think the problem I've got with Tottenham is that I will give Graham credit when credit is due. There's a lot of games this season that Tottenham have won that have been down to his in-game management and tactics that have swung the game in our favour. But my concern is that, when you're looking at the Carabao Cup, I want Spurs to take very, very seriously. How excited I was after we got through against City. I came on here, I was jubilant, I was so happy. Spurs are realistically, after they face United, going to have to face Liverpool, Arsenal in the next round. So you're going to have to face another Premier League team to knock them out. I'm not saying Tottenham can't do that, because, again, it will be a rotated team from one of those respective sides. But my worry with Tottenham is quite simply, Sim, you just don't know what you're going to get. You just don't know what you're going to get. The unpredictability of this side is worrying. You can get a really good performance, you can get a really bad performance. But I think when you look at the teams that have won the Cups in recent years, I think it's a stat around 80% of the teams that have won them have been a City, Liverpool, a United that, again, United are also inconsistent. It's one of those top teams that are going to go on and win these cups. And the reality is, I'm talking domestically now. I think you've got to show a level of form as well to do that. And I think our erratic nature...
But Ricky, but if we're saying, if at the beginning of the season your position is, I don't mind, I'm not too bothered about league position if we can get cups, right? If that's your position, so in essence, aren't you saying I'm willing to take a bit of inconsistency in the league to get a cup win? And isn't this what it looks like? What we're going through now, isn't that what it looks like?
I don't think inconsistency is week in, week out, Sim. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. I don't think that is. In any second season under a manager, I think there's got to be an element of improvement. If you're telling me, and I'm going to throw it back at you now, that what have we had? We've had 3 away wins in the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that should we be accepting that?
I'm not. No, but my position wasn't that I don't care where we finish in the league. That's your position. That's what I'm saying.
That's fair. I'm happy to accept that and not be a hypocrite and not go back on what I'm saying. You're right, but I think there's inconsistency, Sim, in terms of winning 3 or 4 and then losing 1. I think we've only sustained back-to-back wins once this season, and I think in Andrew's tenure, we've only won back-to-back 3 times so far since he's been in charge. Mm-hmm. For a club of Tottenham's heritage and standing, whilst you're right that for me personally, I want to see more of an emphasis on the cups, and I'm not going to disagree with you and call myself a hypocrite on that point. There's got to still be an element of where you feel that there is an element that the team is progressing to go in these cup and win the games. And I think if you're in a situation where week in, week out, it's a win, it's a loss, it's a win, and it's a loss, and as a fan, you're almost tearing your hair out thinking, I don't know what Tottenham I'm going to get. I think even in a cup competition, it is hard with that level of inconsistency to sustain a win in a competition. I might be completely wrong. They might go and win the Carabao Cup, and if so, I'll be delighted. I will be delighted. But even in cup competitions, and whilst Anne just said, again, I'll make that point, he's shown some really good tweaks from a tactical position point of view. I'm not seeing enough to give me confidence in. This is what it goes back to. It's the word confidence. Am I confident I can see Tottenham progressing in the latter stages of Europe against tactically wise more teams that, again, I think will be able to break down Tottenham, where we're a side that have got, in my opinion at the moment, a way of playing football that we've seen a lot of teams infiltrate, let's be honest about it, and we're conceding very similar goals. That is my concern. But I'm not going to disagree with what you're saying there. I'm going to go back on what you said and agree with you that, yes, my emphasis is on the cup competitions. No, I haven't got more of a feeling towards the Premier League. However, I do think Tottenham being 10th isn't acceptable. It just isn't. For what we've got in that squad, for the players that we've got, we are not the 10th team in the Premier League.
I agree.
We're not. And I think that goes back to the point of the fact that we need to see more progression in this second season to give us the confidence, to even give Ange the confidence that he himself sees more from this team. I can tell you, look, there won't be anybody, we're all fans, we all care, we all love the club. I can guarantee you Ange Postecoglou is absolutely heartbroken and gutted and in despair about these nature of these results. He does care. You see that after every game. I know there's a lot of criticism about the fact that he didn't come over to the crowd, and I don't really, agree with the fact that you've got to be there to front it when you win and front it when you lose. I don't think you can just go down the tunnel after you get beat. I think you've got to be there through good and bad. And you know what? I know there's an incident that happened on Sunday from the court, an incident where he seemed to have a bit of I don't say altercation, but take umbrage with what fans did at the end of the game. The reality is that, if he's been questioning his tactics, you can't argue about that. If it's a more personal thing about his life, I don't agree with that. So I just feel, Sim, that we're not going to see a huge difference with Tottenham than what we're seeing right now throughout the season. Nothing shows me that. I'm only going by the eye test, and whilst the stats are looking great, I just worry that we're going to see more of this. And the worrying thing that you do see is that when you see more of this inconsistency, more and more players, Sim, they lose hope. They lose belief in the process. And that's why I worry. You've got to bear that in mind. There are players in there that, let's be honest about it, someone like Romero, I've said this to you on a number of shows, I'm not just saying this now, his head's been in Madrid since the last summer. And I mean that, Heung-min Son, I love Sonny, you love Sonny, Sonny, unfortunately now, as we see, there's nothing wrong by saying this, I don't think we should be, chastised for saying this, we're seeing towards the end of Sonny's career, which is absolutely heartbreaking because He's been an amazing son for the football club. He's been tremendous. And unfortunately, where we've overused him over many, many years and not had sufficient backup, now, bless him, we can't keep him fit. And also, the club have shipped him around like a marketing stall around Asia for every pre-season they go to. And unfortunately, he just can't keep doing it anymore. So, James Maddison, again, vice-captain. James has not reached the heights that we want him to. I'm sure he's disappointed as well. If it's the system, it's one thing. But Kulusevski definitely coming on this season has also not helped him in terms of that position. So this is the problem. When your key players, Tim, are not stepping up and performing, this also doesn't help you. You know, Kulusevski's been great this season, but one player can't carry a team. It says a lot to me. You've got Vicario on the bench in the Europa League games. That seems to be Ange's number 2. Very passionate, very driven. But again, I'll make the point. Vicario, fabulous shot stopper, but he's also got to sort his own house issues out with regards to crossing.
Let's talk about James Maddison then, because there does definitely the last couple games seem to be something going on with him, considering that the Villa game, he obviously came on off the bench in that game, scored the goal, which was great, but he only got the last 10 minutes in that game. Did start the game against Galatasaray, but then against Ipswich, considering we were losing for like that game, he only got 5 minutes, which was a massive surprise to a lot of people there. There is a narrative, as you're saying, that we're not seeing the best of him. He's not been very good. But, I mean, again, I'm looking at his performances this season. I think for a lot of the season, he has been quite good. I remember the Leicester game, beginning of the season, he was brilliant. He got an assist in that game. The Everton game, at home, we won 4-0. He played very well in that game. I thought when we played Newcastle away, I think he got an assist for Brendan Johnson's goal, and he was one of our better players. I remember against Arsenal, he was pretty poor. But against Brentford at home, probably man of the match. He was absolutely brilliant, got a goal and assist. Another brilliant game when we went to Old Trafford. He was played very well. Him and Decky were linking up amazingly, and a big part of the reason we won 3-0. And then it all started to turn. When it turned was we're against Brighton, we're 2-0 up at half time. He had a goal, and then obviously we fell apart, but he was obviously, seen as quite a big reason why we fell apart, because he wasn't putting in the efforts to make sure we keep that lead. We then play at home to West Ham. He actually had a decent first half and got an assist, but was taken off at half time with the score level, right? And we ended up winning the game 4-1. But he, for some reason, Ange decided he was to blame for why it wasn't going right in that first half, despite the fact that he got an assist and I think created 5 chances in that game. He then was probably man of the match on the Thursday at home to Alkmaar. On that weekend, but then came back in the team against Palace and was terrible, like a lot of the team, but he was obviously really, really bad in that game. Then completely out the team for Man City. The following game after that, out the team again for Villa, albeit he came off the bench and scored a free kick. Then started against Galatasaray, terrible performance, and then out the team again against Ipswich and only got 5 minutes to the team we were losing. So up until I would say that Brighton game, which was about a month ago now, I thought he was having a pretty good season. And then for some reason, since that Brighton game, something's happened and things have turned with him. So do you think there has been some sort of falling out? Is it a case of he's a bit insecure with the fact that Decky's maybe taken his spot? Is he what's it called? Do you think he's been really bad all season, or is it just a recent thing? Or is it just a case of, Ange believes Sarr gives us better balance and he has to be the full guy with Decky in the form he's in, and it's not because he's out of the team because of form. He's just more out of the team because of the balance this team needs. What do you think about that?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, Tim, the reality is that, is it a factor of all those things potentially? I mean, the reality is of it that, I said this during the show and I will say this again, that the James Maddison we all thought we were getting, we haven't seen on a consistent basis. Now, again, that can be for a number of reasons. Is it the system? Is it the fact that he's really struggled to come to a bigger club with no disrespect to Leicester, although they seem to give us a lot of disrespect down the years, Leicester? James is one of those players for me that looks like he needs a lot of love and a lot of fact of being told that we need you, you're our main man. And the reality is that at the moment in this Tottenham team, he's not the main man, is he? Kulusevski has become that central role figure in at number 10. that means that really we've tried to play them together. It hasn't quite worked. You know, I think it's damning dark the way James.
Can I ask you quick before we get into the whole? Do we think there's a problem with Maddison? Why is it when we have a game like, let's say, Brighton away or let's say Palace away, and we play Maddison and Decky together, and it doesn't work, right? And we lose those games. People say, "Oh, it doesn't work." You know, we you know.
No, I agree.
And then we put Sarr in, and we lose to Ipswich at home. People don't say, "Oh, that doesn't work." They just say, "Oh, we played terrible," but they don't blame Maddison and Decky together.
I don't think it can't work. I think there's certain games you can do it, and certain games you can't do it, Sim. I just think it's more of a case of you've got to pick your selections wisely based on who you're playing. And the reality is there's no reason why they can't play together. But they are very similar like players now and what they've been asked to do for the team. And the reality is that Decky's output has been much stronger than James has been. Let's suppose about it since he's come to the club. And I know he's got a fabulous free kick the other day, and Ange made that point when he was asked by one of the journos the fact he didn't make the England squad again. And Ange, I think it's quite an interesting response. Ange says, I don't think you get in the England squad, mate, by scoring a free kick, which I think tells you a lot about the fact of where Ange sees James at right now. He's not there in terms of the level. If he was, he'd be in the team. Let's be honest about it, Sim. He needs to get results.
But he does have more goal contributions for Tottenham this season than any other player.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. But I mean, at the same time, I think if anybody said to you, you're picking your lineup tomorrow, and I'm not saying you can only have one or Decky or James in that position who you're going to pick. You're probably picking Decky on current form. That doesn't mean to go back to your point that Decky and James can't play together. I just think with James at the moment that I feel he's a real confidence player, and he really, I think, thrives on that. And the fact that it seems very, very clear that he's not at the forefront of Ange's plans, and the fact that I've got to be honest with you, I mean, I didn't quite understand, what you're going to get from James Maddison in 3.5 minutes. You said 5 minutes against Ipswich. I mean, what are you going to get from a player like that in 5 minutes?
No, I agree, and that was the one.
I don't think it's more of a. I don't mean to be rude by saying it's more of a piss take, an insult, really, to bring him on for 3.5 minutes to go. That's the vice captain of the club. You've just said it there. He's got more goal contributions than anybody else this season in the Spurs team. I think you said. I mean, it's a bit of an insult. I'm giving you 3.5 minutes to go and do something.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, it just shows me that there is a bit of a problem now. And whether people like to say it or not, or they think I might be sensationalising things, it obviously all isn't well, isn't it? Because if James Maddison is happy at Tottenham, and if Ange is happy with James, he's starting every week, and he's not starting every week. So that's a concern. They paid a huge amount of money for him. He isn't producing the value for that. I mean, if you remember, we signed James. We were losing Harry Kane at the time, and James took that number 10 shirt, and everybody was like, right, we've got somebody here that's going to really guide this club and lead us through this tumultuous period. And he played really well in those first 10, if you remember. Those first 10 games are great. And I remember at the time losing them against Chelsea, we're all sitting there thinking, as much as we're losing Van der Ven, we're losing James Maddison. Now, if I'm going to be honest with you, I mean, I'm not saying I want him to be injured or I wish anything on the guy, but I think, is he really that influential where we can't cope without him at the moment? And that's really hard for me to say that because I want James to be, at the top of his game and playing well for Tottenham and us needing him. I just don't think we've seen that player reproduce what he's capable of at Tottenham for a number of reasons. I think maybe the system's not working for him. Maybe the adjustment to Tottenham as a club is not helping him. But there's a talented player in there because we've seen it throughout his career. It's just trying to unlock that. But I've got to be honest with you, Sim, I don't really have the answer for you as to what that is. Is it changing the manager for James? I don't know. Clearly, there seems to be something there with regards to him and Ange and the way he wants him to play and the way he's not getting him to play.
But it was working for some games. Like I think our best performances this season have probably been with Decky and Maddison together. I think I'd argue that. The games against Brentford and Man United were probably our two best performances of the season. I know we also beat West Ham and we beat Villa. But I don't think we were as dominant in those games as we were when we beat Brentford and Man United, and that was with Maddison and Decky. And when results started to turn after the Brighton game, Ange just felt like we need a bit more balance in that midfield, maybe for certain games, and he's taken Maddison out because Decky's just been our best player this season. He's kind of undroppable at the moment, but. Does that mean? I think a game like Ipswich, that was a game after the Ipswich game that started to make me think maybe there is a problem because when we're 2-1 down or 2-0 down against a team who haven't won a game this season, you clearly need quality on that pitch. You need someone who can come on and change the game in your favour and add those final third bits of magic. And you got the perfect person on the bench in Maddison to do that. And he waits until 5 minutes to go when the game turns frantic. Everyone's just lumping the ball into the box, and the urgency is over the top. And there's no, when you have Maddison on the pitch, you just need a bit of patience, don't you? You need someone who could set the tone of the game, and you can't give him 5 minutes to do that. You have to give him at least half an hour, 20 minutes or something to do that. For 5 minutes to go was ridiculous.
On this point as well, and that also worries me because he is an influential character in that dressing room. He's very well liked in that dressing room. A lot of players look up to him. He's a vice captain. What is it? Again, what is he thinking when he's seeing our current form and he can't get on to affect the game for a longer period? That's my worry with James. I think, again, on his day, like you said, can be a fabulous player. I think the issue with James, like a lot of this Tottenham team, is it's severely lacking consistency. And until we find that consistency, yeah, I do worry. It's probably, again, I really want to come on this and be really positive. I am, in my life, I'm a really positive person in terms of outlook. I'm a person that always is excited, always is, forefront and hopeful of what I do, everything in my life, and Tottenham is the only thing in my life that is really so inconsistent in terms of what it does to my mood. And there's some people out there that feel like that. And I feel for every Spurs fan out there because there's such an amazing group of fans that we've got that all they want to do is see this team be successful. They go home and away. They travel around the country. We all commit so much money to this football club and what we do for them and how much we love them and on merchandise and stuff and everything we do. We all want the same thing, Sim. That's the thing that I think is really important that we stress on this show. We all want the same thing. We all want Tottenham to be successful. There are different ways you can do that for certain. And to be fair, look, you said at the start of the show, they have gone down this new project. They've ripped up the coaching staff. They've ripped up the scouting network. They've embedded a new managing director in there as well. They've got a new technical director in there as well. But I just feel with Tottenham that still that culture, unfortunately, Sim, as it goes back to that point, there's still still in that building that unfortunately does not enable us to be able to win. And what I mean by win is win consistently and breed a winning culture. And unfortunately, I just don't know if football is the most... Well, I know it's not. It's not first in terms of when it comes to what everybody wants. And I don't want to go back to that topic again and veer back to that. But I think until this football club puts football at the forefront of its mind, the forefront of what we're about, I worry about where we do actually go in the future when it comes to direction and when it comes to what the plan is. I've always said the thing for me about Tottenham at the moment is, and Lee says it all the time when he comes on these shows, what are we planning for? What are we heading for? What is our ambition? What is our why? Can you tell me, Sim, what our ambition is right now? Can you tell me what our why is? Do you know what we're aiming and striving towards? Do you know that?
I think right now I'd argue if I was, let's say, if I was playing the role of a board member of Tottenham Hotspur, my answer would be after Conte and Mourinho, we realised we were in a horrible direction in terms of the football we were playing and how we were spending our money and what direction we were going for. And instead of going in that direction, we've decided to lower the average age of the squad, signed a lot of potential players who could look to the future of this club and not just because that's something we neglected for many, many years. When we had the 10 years of Conte and Mourinho, we neglected the future of this club and we neglected to bring in players who, were ready to step in and have potential to grow. We also are now playing a different brand of football, which the fans can get excited about. And I think the goal is that we have a team that can grow together and build a culture together rather than buying it from outdoors, because clearly we are not going to commit the funds needed to spend the money that is going to basically match the teams above us when it comes to money spent. So there's no point trying to go in the direction of trying to outspend our opponents. So while we're going to do things in a different direction where we're trying to be very, very smart with our money, buying a lot of younger players that have the potential to be as good as, the players above, the teams above us given time. And that is the way we're going to compete. And that's probably what they would say.
How long, Sim, is that? What in reality, we keep saying about the potential. We've been talking about the potential for like 20 years. I mean, at what point are we actually going to really be in a position to win? This is my biggest bugbear. In Tottenham, the manager's coming out and telling us that he doesn't settle for third or fourth or second. He wants to be first, but yet the actions of what we do is not a club that wants to be first. And I agree with you on your point you're making. I can't disagree with anything you've said in terms of what you've said there. I think
I'm just playing devil's advocate as if I was a board member. That's what I would say. It's not exactly what I believe, but yeah.
No, it's not what you believe. But this word potential infuriates me because potential means it could be great, it might not be great. So you are waiting really to see over time how this pans out, and I think that's the problem with Tottenham. We were a club that we used to have such more high standards. It really upsets me how these last 4 or 5 years.
But that was what we did under Poch, isn't it? It was a similar kind of thing, and it worked out, wasn't it?
I think under Poch, though, I think just go back there for a second with Poch. There was a feeling amongst the fan base. I think generally, I can't talk for everybody. I would never talk for everybody because everybody's got their own feelings and views. I'm not here to talk for everybody, but under Pochettino, there was a feeling that we were building towards something. We were building towards having this stadium. We were building towards having this training ground. We were having a young side that was growing. We were seeing progression, Sim, week upon week in season 2, right? We were seeing that. Players were emerging. Dele was emerging. Kane was growing as a player in stature and what he was. Hugo was that leader that we needed. Dembele, Wanyama.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. In season 2 under Pochettino, we started the season with 4 winless games.
We did, but I think
we still showed some inconsistency in that season.
We did, but the key thing is with Poch is when you got to the middle part of season 2, and look, Sim,
we haven't got there yet.
This is still to play out, so I could. Yeah. Listen, it could all change, and I could be a egg on my face in the next couple of months saying to you, it has all played out. But my thing is that I saw big strides in that second season under Maurizio that was showing me we are improving. At this moment in time, I can only speak about what's happened today. Like you said, I can't predict the future, but all I can tell you is from what I'm seeing from the eye test is that I don't see anything massively changing here week upon week unless Ange really can get hold of some of these players and shake them. I mean that in the most politest way, because my worry is he was meant to have had a real talking to him after the Brighton second half. That talking to him lasted for 1 game because we responded against West Ham and won. The following week, we then go and lose to Palace. Again, he would have had he would have spoke about it. They would have talked about it. We then respond and we beat Man City and Villa, respectively, in the Cup and the Premier League. And then we follow that up with a really dismal performance against Ipswich Town. So it doesn't appear. This is what worries me, Sim. I don't think we. Do I want to sack another manager and go through all this again? I really don't. I'm so drained of sacking managers. We've run out of managers to hire, Sim. I couldn't even give you 5 names that would want to come for the Tottenham job. We've come to the point that the Tottenham job, can I be honest with you, as much as you sit here and say it's a great young squad and it's got potential, I don't think the Tottenham job's that attractive anymore than what it was 10, 15 years ago. We've gone through so many managers, Ange wasn't the first choice. He was the 6th or 7th choice. Slot probably come out and turned us down. The job is not as attractive as what it once was. I look at Tottenham now as a club. Any manager coming in knows that the full emphasis at the moment is not on winning. It's on, unfortunately, other vested interests. But to come back to your point on the whole consistency piece, my worry is that I don't think the players are listening to Ange week in, week out. And I think if you haven't got players listening, that's a really, really difficult way to try and navigate and get results in the long term. Whoever's in charge, you've seen it so many times, Sim. It's really, really hard. So I don't want to end the show on a disappointment or a downer. I want to really sit here and say that we're going to come back and we're going to learn and we're going to right the wrongs and we're going to, in the words of the players, what they put on X and Instagram, come back stronger. But I just look at us and I worry about the future because I don't see anything that's showing me at the moment, despite the XG being great in terms of the goals scored and, less conceded and the way we've conceded less goals. There's so many recurring things around the goals we're conceding, around the fact of the lack of learning around second half performances, around the fact that we're conceding first in pretty much all the games at the moment. That is not sustainable for any team. It's not. It's not sustainable. And I'm a positive fan, and I'm saying this. I know when I see a lot of moderate fans, no disrespect, losing their shit, that kind of makes me feel better because I know I'm not in the minority. And look, every fan is entitled to their view about the manager, about the chairman, about the players. But as I've said, collectively, everybody is not doing enough. It's not good enough on all levels, from the board to the player to the manager. That's why I say the blame has to be apportioned. It isn't one person. It isn't two people. It's a number of contributing factors to why Spurs are where they are at the moment, which is really heartbreaking.
Yeah, and look, when you have such a bad loss just before an international break and you have 2 weeks to spew on such a result, and you look at the last 6 games, it's 3 wins and 3 losses, and as Spurs fans, we're all tearing our hair out as to, are we a good team, are we rubbish? It's hard to know at the moment exactly where we are, because it's from week to week, it's literally Jekyll and Hyde at the moment. But I'm still confident that in a few weeks' time, hopefully, it can look very different for us. But
can I ask you, Sim, just on that point?
Could look different either way.
What gives you that confidence that you will see consistency? Because I'm only asking you on the basis that because you're seeing this up and down nature week in, week out, and we've had this discussion about the fact that I don't think the players appear to be fully listening to him. Otherwise, you wouldn't get those displays that you're getting every other week. What gives you the confidence and shows you that you can see consistency around the corner? Because that's what fascinates me. Why? Because
when we win very well. We win by big margins, and when we're losing at the moment, we are losing narrowly, usually by the odd goal, and that's easier to turn than I think these bigger wins will turn. If you know what I mean, I think that's an easier fix.
When we're losing, we're losing badly. We're not losing in a way in which you look at games and think, God, we were really close to getting something there. If we can I be honest with you, my approach.
Well, we are only losing by 1. When we're winning by 3 or 4, right?
What I mean is, if I was coming on here, I was saying to Sim, do you know what? We played bloody well at Palace. We played bloody well against Ipswich. We were really unlucky. We got done by a wonder goal. Then I would be a lot more different in my approach. But the fact that I look at the performances, and it's the lethargic nature and the lack of desire, lack of commitment, lack of fight, lack of passion in those performances. That's what worries me. I'll take your point there that they're narrow defeats. They are narrow defeats, but can you honestly tell me in the Brighton second half, in the Palace game, in the Ipswich game, tell me, you're there for these games, you're sitting there, you're watching these games. Can you tell me honestly, from those performances, you were coming away thinking, God, we was unlucky not to get something there?
No, not those games. Not those games. And some games you are going to deserve to lose, and we did deserve to lose those games. I'm not going no bones about it. We deserve to lose those games, and I guess the trend at the moment is with some of these performances, it does seem to be getting worse, which is a worry. But we also have had some big wins. We've also had some performances where maybe we didn't get the result we deserved, like maybe Leicester away and Newcastle away at the beginning of the season, where we probably should have got wins in those games and we ended up not getting the wins in those games. So I do think the problems that we got at the moment, I think are fixable. And as much as it's crazy after 11 games, they're not being fixed and we're all tearing our hair out as the inconsistency. We've now got, after this international break, we've got a long stretch of games now between now and I think February time, where it's just going to be relentless football. And if you remember when we did have Pochettino, and we obviously played this high pressing style, not too dissimilar to what we're playing now in terms of required a lot of intensity. Yeah. Obviously, can go one of two ways, but I always remember under Pochettino, it was always around November time and December where we really hit our stride, and we did have inconsistencies early in the season. That's not to say just because that happened is going to happen now, but what I'm saying is, let's just see where we are come Christmas. Let's judge things at that point, because right now, the table is so tight. Obviously, the results against Palace and Ipswich are unacceptable. Don't get me wrong, but knowing this team will probably lose to Ipswich and then go away at City and win, and then you make up for that result. And if we can make up some of those results with some unexpected wins, which I wouldn't put it past this team to do that, then things will look very, very different. And I think the wins that we have had this season, I can't think of a win that we've had that we haven't deserved and that we've got lucky. I think all the wins we've had have been...
Apart from Coventry in the Cup.
But okay, commentary in the cup, I'll give you that. But in the league, I mean, like I
No,
think
not the league.
all the wins we've had, we've deserved to win. We won by big margins. Like when I see other teams win, like like when some other teams I've seen win this season, they've been getting some lucky wins, and then you look back and think, probably didn't deserve to win that game. But when we win well. We've got to keep that. We've got to remember that, and we've got to take inspiration from that, and not let these defeats seep too negatively into our minds and think that these defeats can't be sorted. Because as much as it's maddening that we're inconsistent at the moment, you got to remember when we do win, we're not lucky. We're not winning luckily. We're winning well. Like when we go back to that Nuno tenure, when we were winning, we were dreadful. We were terrible. We won. We were winning 1-0 with one shot on target from a cross from a shot that was from a goal that was supposed to be a cross that went all the way in, and would win the game 1-0. Like we were terrible during that period. No one was convinced by the wins.
I can't disagree with you on that, but I think it goes back to me that unfortunately for every game we're saying it's right, we've won really well. For the games that we've lost, we've also lost in a way that doesn't really show me on the day that we deserved anything more from those games. Apart from I'd probably say Newcastle away, where I think we were really unlucky, and Leicester to be fair. Newcastle and Leicester for me have been the outliers where we played really well against Leicester. I don't know how we went 4 or 5-1 up really at the time and we didn't win the game. And Newcastle the same, we played really well and got done with the high line. The problem is I just want to finish on this point for me. Look, I don't see at this moment, I don't see any benefit in sacking him now unless somebody can come to me with a ready-made, or say ready-made, but a replacement that can hit the ground running straight away, that can really take this team massively forward. I just don't see there's that person out there right now. So, I mean, people might think I'm crazy saying, well, why are you backing a man that clearly you don't have any faith in? I just don't see why we could write off a season, because you are making points there, Sim, that, in the wins that we've had, we've dominated on. But I can't lie to you that I have got massive, massive reservations right now about this team week upon week and consistently about getting results. I just unfortunately don't see anything that shows to me there's going to be any real change in trajectory in regards to results at the moment. I really hope I'm wrong. I honestly, Sim, I really, really want to be wrong. I really, really hope I'm wrong, because nothing makes me more happier, apart from my family and my kids, of seeing Tottenham win. And again, that's the thing for me, that I want to see this club do well. I love the football club. Again, it changes your weekend when they win. It's like, even when we're doing this kind of thing with content and stuff, it's freaking hard when you lose. You don't want to be able to do this kind of thing. You want to be able to talk about the club positively. I mean, I think that showing after City was probably our favourite ones of recording, because we were so upbeat, And I don't want to talk for Maka, but Maka is one of the most positive people I know in my life, right? And I think he freaking hates the defeats because it's hard for him to accept there's problems there. He wants to be an optimistic, positive person, but this is tough right now. And it is the lack of consistency that is really hurting us.
Look, Ricky, I think you'd be stupid after losing to Palace and Ipswich like we have, teams who haven't won, not to be angry and question things. I think you'd be stupid not to. And yeah. Of course, I question things as well. I'm not sitting here blindly thinking that it's all going to be upwards and where everything's going to be okay just because I like some of the wins that we've had. Of course, it's, are we going to get that consistency? All these different things. Those are very big questions. And if it doesn't go Ange's way, he will be sacked. I don't doubt that. If he can't turn these things around, he will be the fall guy. But I'm just looking at it from what I've seen so far this season. I can see reasons why we can turn it around, and I can see more reasons why we can turn it around more than reasons why we won't. That's just my opinion. But people call me deluded, so there you go.
Oh, well, Sim, mate, just to finish off, I really hope you're right. I really, really hope you're right. And for every Spurs fan that's out there, again, I'll say this, that everyone needs to remember we all do want the same thing. We all want to see the club be successful. There's different ways you can do that, but I think you should never get away from the fact that, I'd like to think the majority of people that watch Tottenham and follow Tottenham all want Tottenham to win, because otherwise, what's the point? There's no point, is there, in following the club if what you're taking out of pleasure is us getting beat. So, yeah, it's tough at the moment. We all want to talk more highly and positively about things at the moment, but I would like to say reserve my judgment until I'm with you next week, my man, and hopefully we're reviewing or previewing the City game with a bit more, good feeling about us. But obviously, it's not been great so far when it comes to the news about Bentancur. But again, we make that point of Bentancur that he has to take whatever's given to him in the nature of that ban. It is what it is. But we are going to miss him in the Premier League, and we have to hope that Ange's going to work with the players when they come back, which will be very few days between the City game, to find a way of picking them up. But if you remember, like I say, last season we went to City, I mean, we were decimated by injuries. I think we had Emerson Royale and Ben Davies as the fullbacks, didn't we? And we went and got a 3-3 up there. So
Exactly.
anything is possible.
Yeah, knowing this team, you just never know,
Yeah.
do you? What you know, we'll lose to Ipswich and beat City. It's just the type of team we are, isn't
I mean,
it?
City are on a terrible run at the moment, but I mean, Tottenham are Dr. Tottenham. So the reality
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
whoever's on a really, really bad form, we and their fullback. So
I would rather there were a run of wins, to be honest, and we'll probably win that game. But look, Ricky, well, I think we'll end it there, but appreciate your time as always, mate. Appreciate you coming on the show. Do you want to let people know what's going on Last One on Spurs this week?
You're very kind. Yeah, we've got we're doing an interview tomorrow with one of the co-authors of Angie's book, who is used to Ange at this stage of a season, and will give us some interesting analysis of what Ange will likely do in these coming weeks and months based on his previous tenures at different clubs, what is to come in the second season, how can he fix issues that he was suffering at Celtic, so that'll be interesting.
I've heard it goes from chapter to chapter, just beautifully written. They're not utter rubbish. That's what happens in the book.
And then we've got a big show with David Pleat coming on the weekend, which will be great. David obviously was at the club for a long time. He's got a lot of inside experts from around the club, and it'll be interesting to get some stories from David about probably who we signed, who we didn't sign. I'm sure people know about that anyway, but it'll be great. So, yeah, thank you so much, Sim. We're looking forward to having you boys on our channel around transfer window time. I mean, God, what we're going to be like doing those shows together.
Let's just hope we can survive until Man City, and then we'll see what we can get from that result. Because at the moment, I don't know if this fan base is ready to implode. I think at the moment, so let's just hope we can all survive until then.
Just a message to the Spurs fans that watch this channel, and again, you guys have got great support, and that we love being part of this with you guys as well. And likewise, we're looking forward to returning the favour on ours. Just remember, guys, we have got a week away from it. I would just urge supporters, man, just go and do the things that you love with the people that you love, and just go and take a break from away from it. Because the thing with supporting Tottenham in general, for those out there know, it is really draining, Sim. We unfortunately run what we do with Tottenham we've got our own independent things that we're doing with the channels and stuff. But it's really important, I think, when Spurs aren't on, just find that solace, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's going to the gym, just get away from them at times. Don't let them surround and cloud your life, because, I'm sure like everybody, they're the first thing you wake up from, or the first thing you think about in the morning, the last thing you think about when you go to bed, and it isn't all positive right now. So I'd encourage people to go and do what they love most, and don't allow the club and the results to sway you. Even though I look so at the moment.
So what you're saying is just do a Macca. Just get away from it all for a bit. Find a holiday. Just as soon as that. Just do a Macca, people. All right. Nice one, Ricky. Appreciate your time as always, mate. We'll see you all very, very soon. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.
Love to.